Hello, and welcome to the Atomic Lizards podcast. It's time for our Now Playing series, where we look at the newest movies and TV shows currently playing or streaming. I'm Miranda, the film fanatic.
I'm Udi, the de facto film expert.
And I'm Dan, the kaiju extraordinaire.
On today's episode of Now Playing, we're talking about Avatar The Last Airbender, Netflix's live action adaptation of the Nickelodeon animated show of the same name.
Avatar The Last Airbender takes place in a fictional fantasy setting where humans can control one of the four elements at will: water, earth, fire, or air. This is known as bending, and only one person can bend all four elements, making them the most powerful bender in the world. They're called the Avatar. With this power, the Avatar is entrusted with keeping balance and peace between all four nations. However, this balance is disrupted when the Fire Nation attacks and begins a 100-year war against the other nations. In that time, the Avatar disappears, leaving the world without hope to stop the Fire Nation's conquest, until a pair of Water Tribe siblings named Katara and Sokka discover that the Avatar is still alive, thus bringing back hope to the world that this war will finally end and peace will soon be reached.
Produced by Netflix, Avatar The Last Airbender is a 2024 television show that's a remake of the original 2005 Nickelodeon cartoon of the same name. The show was developed by Albert Kim and stars the talents of Gordon Cormier. I apologize in advance if I butcher this. Keo and Tio, Ian Ousley, Dallas Liu, Paul Sun Hyung, Daniel Day Kim, Ken Leong, and Elizabeth Yu.
Episode will have spoilers, so go watch it if you haven't. We'll probably be talking about, or at least mentioning, the cartoon, possibly the live action movie, and of course, this new version. So you have been warned. Before we begin, do you guys have any history with the franchise? Did you watch it on Nickelodeon when you were a kid? Had you seen the live action movie? Is this your first viewing? Dan, do you want to start us off?
I'd love to. Little thing about Avatar: The Last Airbender. The original 2005 cartoon on Nickelodeon is my favorite TV show of all time. I'm not talking like my favorite TV show like of recent memory or my favorite TV show growing up as a kid. No, this is my favorite TV show of all time. I love this show. And it's interesting because I did watch it when it aired on Nickelodeon, but not at first. I actually remember seeing ads for this show when it was first coming out, and like at the time it didn't really interest me too much. It was my sisters that got into the show and they were really into it, so much so that they like we bought like the season 1 and 2 like DVDs when it came out. I didn't really get hardcore into the Avatar franchise until I want to say around season 2, because there was at one point where we had the season 1 like DVD set, so I was like, "You know what? I'm going to give this a watch." And yeah, I ended up loving it. And I started watching the show like as it aired, I think around the midpoint of season 2, probably around like the library arc. And yeah, it was really fun. It was, cuz like every week I would just gather up with my sisters and we would watch like the newest episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And let me tell you, like one of the best memories I have of this show was the series finale. And it was pretty cool because we actually got my parents into the show as well when it was coming out. Like my dad actually got into this show, and I remember the day that the finale aired, like we all gathered in the living room. At the time, my dad had like a surround sound system on our TV, so he like had that hooked up, and like literally the entire family just gathered in the living room to watch like the epic series finale to Avatar: The Last Airbender. And it was great, like great memories like that like is why I just love this show so much. But it's not only that, it's because the original show just it had great writing, great characters, like the premise was interesting. I've never seen anything quite like the premise that it had. I mean, people that like can control the elements. Like, I mean, sure, there's like superheroes and maybe a few other things out there that have like similar powers and whatnot, but the way that Avatar does it is different because, like, everybody, well, not everybody, like a huge majority of the population has the power to do it. And there are some people that aren't benders, but I mean that's besides the point. But yeah, I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. I love the original show. There is no 2010 live action movie. That's all I'm gonna say. What about you guys?
What do you mean? There totally is.
Yeah, there is no M Night Shyamalan Avatar movie in Bossing Say, Miranda.
Okay, whatever you say.
Look at the clock that's spinning in front of you. There is no 2010 Avatar: The Last Airbender movie. There is no Avatar: The Last Airbender movie.
It's
What
just a
about
spinning lantern and you're in a basement.
yeah, that'll make sense to you later, Udi.
Yeah.
But what about you, Udi? What's your experience with the franchise?
Well, um, so I was very keenly aware of the show as it was airing. I had several friends that were very into it since like it started airing, but I did not care for it at all. I've said this before on the podcast, but I don't know why. I can't explain it because I often do end up liking it, but I just have like an initial aversion to like it's not necessarily an aversion. I feel like it's just more of a preference thing. It's a like if I have the time to watch this, I would rather just watch this other thing. I feel like that's more of what it is because whether it be an animated movie or it be like a cartoon or an animated show, again, like if I have to like I feel like my brain subconsciously because I did this as a kid and so I just feel like as I got older, like I've gotten better about it, I would say. I'm much more open to like watching these things. But I mean it's also weird because like for example, like an animated thing that I watched as a kid that I really liked was Star Wars The Clone Wars. I watched that for like a season or two growing up, but then I kind of fell off because I don't know, it just got busy or I got distracted between seasons and then I don't know. But so like that I was fine with watching. I loved watching that as it aired. I've watched lots of cartoon shows. Like I used to watch SpongeBob, the Billy and Mandy show. I don't remember the full title of it. Courage, the Cowardly Dog. Countless other animated shows. Transformers. Like there was a Hot Wheels like 3D animated show I used to watch on Cartoon Network. Code Lyoko. Like just on and on and on. Like I've watched a lot of random animated things, but for some reason, as like with many other things, when it came into Avatar, I just like people would be like, "Oh, you gotta watch it. It's so good," and I just like I didn't believe them that it could be that good. Like I'd watch clips of it, and I'm like, I don't understand how this could possibly that like be that great. Like it just looked like every other show. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'll watch it someday, but I didn't really care to try to watch it. But so my neighbor friend who lived across the street at the time, um, he was a huge fan of it. He was like the biggest fan that I knew growing up, and he tried to get me into it so many times. He like would play like the video game times that they would come out with and everything, but just never was able to get me into it. Just never pulled me in. And then the the non-existent 2010 M Night Shyamalan movie was going to be coming out, and my friend was so hyped. And he would have me watch all the behind the scenes like interviews and trailers for it, and like the trailer for that movie played all the time around that time. Like I remember, I saw that trailer tons of times. I guess like probably wasn't even in theaters because I didn't go to the theaters that often when I was that age. Probably more like a DVD. It must have been on the DVD for Transformers or something that came out around that time because or maybe it was Iron Man 2. I don't know. Something like that. But I watched that trailer so many times and and I was like, you know what? After a certain point, I was like, you know what? Honestly, this doesn't look that bad. Plus, like M Night Shyamalan is a pretty, revered director. Like, I'm kind of on board. I'm kind of getting excited for this. This looks pretty good. Like the VFX looks pretty great. And you know what? Yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. And so he convinced me to go see it with him. Oh, like I think it was opening weekend or it was close to opening weekend. Oh boy. Like I went in as someone who hadn't watched the show really. Like I'd watch only like little clips here and there. So I knew nothing. I was a clean slate, and I remember we were watching the movie in theaters, and I was like, okay, all right, this is fine. And then the movie just ends, and I remember it went to black, went to credits, and then I literally just went, "That was it?" Like, out loud, and I remember we were seated in, like, the middle of the theater, and this girl that was, like, 3 rows ahead of us just whipped around and just glared at me, but I, like, looked at her in confusion, like, "Why are you upset with me? That was terrible." Like, it, like, barely did anything, and then it just ended, and I was like, "I thought, like, there'd be way more to it, like, what do you mean that was it?" So yeah, so that was my experience, and for years after, that friend would profusely apologize and be like, "I'm so sorry that it took you to go see that. That was my bad." I'm like, "I mean, you couldn't have known." But yeah. So anyway, so then late last year, because we knew that this show was coming out, Dan wanted to, because we made an agreement before that I would watch this show because it's his favorite show, and he would watch Mr. Robot with me because it's my favorite show. And so since timing wise, like this made more sense to watch first because like this Netflix adaptation was coming out. So then I agreed, and then we started watching it together virtually for the most part. And honestly, I enjoyed the original cartoon. I think, I mean, sure, while it is like a kid's cartoon, whatever, I think the animation is, has aged pretty well, given like when it was made and everything, and being a network show. But also just like the writing, again, it's not like Oscar worthy writing necessarily, but I think like it does a good job of like writing in like lessons for kids or adolescents or whatever, but also still like being fun, being entertaining, being funny. And just like it's not only just for kids. Like I feel like even as an adult you can watch this and get enjoyment out of it. And like like the proverbs and stuff like that that you hear like in the show, or the lessons that you hear, like they're mostly not anything too deep. Like if you're an adult and you're watching this, you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's a good lesson, but it won't be like written super poetically or anything, but it's still good, it's still enjoyable. And so I've been really enjoying watching it with Dan. But yeah, so like with all that being said, like I've known about the show since like it began airing on TV. So I'm very intrigued to see our thoughts collectively on this new Netflix adaptation. With that being said, what's your history with the franchise, Miranda?
Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is something that me and my siblings watched when we were kids, when we were into Nickelodeon shows and stuff. Um, I've always kind of just it's always been like in my brain. Um, though I didn't fully watch all of the series until college, and then I watched Korra, which is really good as well as the original cartoon. Like just watching Avatar and being like pretending you're a waterbender, an earthbender, an airbender, a firebender, like that's just like the moment you're in a pool, you're instantly a waterbender or like all of that stuff. So that definitely is how we played. Like we were into Star Wars, so we played Star Wars, like um wizards, like Harry Potter, we were like wizards, so that's just another thing that we would pretend that we were when playing. And I think the animated show is very, very well made. It has great characters, it has a great story, and for being a children's show, it is actually kind of dark, but it's well balanced with a sense of humor and lightheartedness, and it just works really well together. Um, so yeah, we watched it. Me and my siblings watched it when we were little. And I'm pretty sure we saw the movie that doesn't exist. But I don't think we saw it in theaters. I think we were just watching it on Nickelodeon. So I don't really remember that one too much, but I did rewatch all of Avatar while re while watching the Netflix show. Um, so I'll have thoughts about that later on, but I would say watch the cartoon first. Um, because it is so well made. And I really like the art style, um, and it's animated and it's influenced by anime, but it's not anime. Like, it's not, like, super anime-ish, and I don't think it technically would be considered anime either, but, like, give it a watch if you haven't yet.
I just want to say it's probably for the best that you don't remember the non-existent 2010 live action movie that doesn't exist, Miranda.
I mean, like, it can't possibly have been that bad.
Oh, but it is.
I haven't rewatched it
Maybe.
since I saw it in theaters, but I did watch Caravan of Garbage about the 2010 movie the other day, and oof, yeah, no, it's. I think it can be that bad.
And oh, Udi, I wanted to comment earlier when you were talking about your past history with the franchise. I will say, with all due respect to your friend, he was not doing the best job of like convincing you to get into the show because like he was showing you like all the worst aspects of it, like the video games and like the Shyamalan movie. Like,
I mean, he would try to get me to watch it like sometimes with him. I'd be like, "No, I don't want to. Let's just play a game." And he'd be like, "Okay." Or like he'd have me watch like a short clip or something. I mean, I'm sure he had me watch at least like an episode or two or three, but like they were just random episodes, and I'm like, I don't care. Like I just
yeah,
did not have an interest in it, and I don't know. Maybe again, maybe the episodes he showed me weren't like the best ones or something. I don't know, but nothing he did ever really grabbed me. I guess except for the promotional material for the movie, and well, that killed all future hope of me being interested in the franchise for at least like a decade.
Well, at least you're watching the cartoon now. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting to see the differences on how we got to know this show and how we interacted with it as, children, because it was a very popular show and it was, like, everywhere, and they clearly thought it was popular enough to give it a movie, but yet we all have slightly different, um, like, connections to it. Because like, I think I mentioned I never got to finish it as a child, like, I never saw season 3, so, like, I didn't know the overarching story until way later, um so so that's kind of our thoughts on the original Nickelodeon show and our history with it. But let's get into our initial thoughts on the live action adaptation. Rudy, what are your initial thoughts?
I just want to quickly add, because I was going to add this to the last part, but I just want to quickly add that I do think it's kind of interesting to think about the 2010 movie, just because, like, it is kind of like a curious think piece of, like, well, what if it hadn't been M. Night that adapted it and it had been someone else that did the adaptation? But, you know, it is what it is. It didn't happen. But speaking of this adaptation, though, the Netflix one, um, yeah, I think as someone who doesn't have like a deep history with this show, I think it's a fine show. Uh when like within the first 3 episodes of the show, there was like a like I wasn't not enjoying it, but I also wasn't really liking it that much. I was like, I mean, this is fine. It's not egregious, but it's not like I'm not loving my time watching this show. I'm watching it for the podcast, and that is what it is. But I think by the time the show ended, I was like, okay, all right. It's not that bad. Like it really like there's never a point where I was like, man, this show's terrible. I feel like it's a solid like I feel like this would be like a very like teen show. Like if I was in middle school or high school right now and I was watching this for the first time ever, like especially I think that's the biggest thing. If I'd never watched the cartoon before and I'm only watching this for the first time ever, I think it would be a solid jumping point for someone interested in the franchise. However, if I then went back and watched the cartoon, I feel like I would still end up liking the cartoon more because it really just is better in every way. But I do think that as an adaptation, like a modern adaptation and just like a more succinct adaptation, Plus, like, I mean, I can't speak from this, like, myself, but from what I've gathered, it seems like since they had the whole story to work with from the very beginning, like, they were able to work in elements from, like, later seasons in this season. I don't know for sure, so, like, you, Miranda or Dan, you'll have to, comment on this later when you give your thoughts, but, um, so I think, like, that probably helped them be able to, like, kind of make some points a bit more succinct or, like, bring in some details earlier on than, they might have otherwise. But as like a show just by itself, like standing on its own, I think it's a totally fine show. And even for being like I said, like I feel like more like a teen show. One, I feel like it's like a much higher quality like teen show. So like it's like if this would never air on the CW because this is much more like higher. This is a higher quality than anything like that would be on the CW. No offense to the CW.
Dude,
Um,
CW would not have the budget to make
no, they would
this.
not. Like, somehow if they obtain enough money to make this, it still would not be to this level. Like, I
Dude,
do feel
the
like
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but just real quick, but like the water bending would be they would literally just take a bowl of water and like throw it with the water if it was a CW show.
the behind the scenes for that would be fantastic. It's like a guy in a green screen or like in a green morph suit, just like standing there with a bucket, like, all right, go, phew," and just like dumping people with water.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like that being said, like that out of the way, like it's a much higher quality like show than like something like that would be for sure. But I don't it definitely doesn't reach the heights of like something like HBO, like definitely nothing like that. But I do think that it's of solid quality, VFX some notwithstanding, whatever, but overall I think it's a solid package. And I think even though like I said, I think it would be like a really good like teen show, I do feel like even like again, as an adult, I feel like there's still enough to enjoy here. I don't think that it's too immature or infantile or childish to enjoy. Like I think that there's still the same like that's still the same characters, and some of which who are very layered and interesting characters, and their characterization is still here. Their character arc is still here. Granted, not done as well as in the original show, but again, as an adaptation of the original show, I think it does a pretty okay job with certain things. There are definitely things that I didn't like that I preferred again in the original show, but again, just trying to take this for what it is on its own, like in its own merit. I think it's a totally fine show. Like I did not mind watching it. Again, like initially I wasn't sure how I was feeling. I was like, this is okay, but not loving it. But I think by like episode 3 or 4, I was like, you know what, okay, I'm not hating this. This is fine. Um, like I definitely enjoyed this more than Monarch, which I did not expect going in, but not to like hate on that show more, like that was like a totally fine show, but I think this is definitely much more enjoyable overall, and uh yeah, I'll leave it at that because you guys have to give your thoughts. So, and I'm sure Dan will have a lot to say. So, I'll pass it to you, Miranda. What did you think of this Netflix adaptation?
Yeah, what did I think about Avatar: The Last Airbender live action Netflix TV show? Well, I think it is a passable show. It's not necessarily the most amazing thing, and I don't think it is total garbage. I have heard that like a lot of people dislike it, but I think it's pretty passable. They do follow the general story of season 1 from the cartoon, although even though they're hitting the right points, it's all kind of out of order and they're changing things. And the things they do change, I don't necessarily understand why they change it. I think if you look at it away from the cartoon and, you know, you're into fantasy worlds, I think this would definitely hook people. Um, and it's really hard to separate it from the original TV show because I do know the story, I have that connection. But like at least Aang's name is correct, right? And the characters look like the characters, and they mostly act like the characters, although I feel like certain characteristics are missing, like a lot of Katara's anger is gone. Sokka, although he makes jokes, I feel like he isn't 100% like the comedic guy. Um, Aang feels very serious all the time and not like a 12-year-old who wants to go uh penguin seal sledding or whatever they do in the first episode of the cartoon. Like he is a 12-year-old boy. These are kids, but they all are kind of just acting like mini like adults in a way. And I like obviously this is, they're in wartime. This is a big war. This has been going on for 100 years. But like I feel like they still need to like be able to take a break, have fun, and like with the filler episodes of the cartoon, although they're not really filler episodes because they introduce character plots of the in the cartoon and character development by taking some of that out of this live action version kind of takes away from the audience learning more about these characters and like combining episodes of the cartoon into this 8 episode season, although they're an hour long, so really it's 16 episodes of the cartoon, so they're only cutting out like 4 episodes of the first season, but like it's it's just the interesting way they did it, and I wasn't really expecting the way they were going to do it. Like I had no expectations on how they were going to do it, but I think it's pretty passable. I think the special effects are pretty decent, although I wish we could have seen the fight choreography way more because it's a lot of close up, a lot of fire, rock dust in your face. And like, sure, that's probably how it would be if you're bending in real life, but like, I still want to see the martial arts. I still want to see the forms they're doing. Like, that's something that's visually interesting in the cartoon, which I wish they would have filmed and translated that differently for the live action. I think all of the actors in the show, I think all the kids, I'm assuming they're actual closer to the age of the real characters. I don't actually know. I did not Google them. But I think they all did a good job at portraying the character they are. None of them really stood out too far away from their character because it's like really hard to make an adaptation of a cartoon into live action because like the cartoon is stylized and there's a specific look and feel of it, but I think they tried to transfer that over to live action. And like I guess we'll probably get into this maybe a little more, but like I feel like the mystery of Aang was kind of taken away through like the flashback on the first episode, which really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, I guess, because like that's the whole beginning arc of the show is like who is this random kid in ice, why are they here, what's going on, and you get this whole mystery, and then they kind of just show it all to you and you don't get like hooked into the show as much. But as the season goes on, like you get more like little knowledges and little bits of like the story that do hook you. So you know it's really hard to judge. I'm sure if I watch it again, I'll have different opinions. So this is very much my first impressions. So just keep that in mind, I guess. But I'm gonna pass it over to Dan now. What are your thoughts?
All right. So, what did I think of Netflix's live action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, my favorite TV show of all time? Well, I remember when this show was coming out, like I was cautiously optimistic because you know, last time this was attempted in live action, it didn't turn out so well. So I was cautiously optimistic, and in my mind, all I was saying was the only thing this really has to do is just be better than the Shyamalan adaptation, which shouldn't be hard. And I will say that this movie succeeds in that. It is better than the Shyamalan adaptation. But that's not saying much. I did not really like this show, if I'm being completely honest. Just I know it's its own thing, it's its own adaptation, but I can't help but compare this to the original cartoon. I mean, how can you not? It's a remake of it. Like, I don't know how you guys feel about remakes, but I personally feel that when something gets remade, it's meant to replace the original because why remake it if the original was good enough to begin with?
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I was constantly, from my memory of what I remembered from season one, I was constantly just comparing the two, the like this remake and the original. I also will say that I mean I think that when like with something like this, I feel like they remake it. I mean, live action versus like animation, like you'll try to get a different audience with that, but also just kind of bringing it to light again. Like obviously the show, the original is super popular still, but like just a way to kind of refresh it and like get more people interested again. But yeah, sorry. Continue with your thoughts.
No, you good. You bring up a good point, but once again, I feel like if you're remaking something, you're trying to replace the original with it, and that's just how I feel. And I think this fails as a replacement to the original because it's just the writing's not as good. The changes, like we've already kind of mentioned the changes, and we'll dive deeper into what we thought about the changes here in a bit. But like once again, I understand this is an adaptation. It's going to be different. It shouldn't be the same thing. It shouldn't. But that being said, the changes you make need to make sense. And I personally feel that the changes that they made for this version just don't make sense to me. It's like, why? Why do this change? This change doesn't make sense. Like, you can do something different, but it still has to make sense. And yeah, I just feel like a majority of the changes they do don't make sense. I thought the acting was kind of bad, honestly. Like, especially Zuko. I thought Zuko's acting was really bad. I mean, all the other kids they do okay. Like, I think the kid who plays Aang, he does fine. I mean, his acting can be a little off to me at times. Katara and Sokka do okay. I actually really like Uncle Iroh's actor. I forget his name at the moment, but he's from the show Kim's Convenience on Netflix. If you've ever watched that, I really liked him as Iroh. Like, he did great, but like he was like the only character, and I guess the guy who played Zhao was okay too. But yeah, I felt like a majority of the acting wasn't that great. Most of the storytelling is just told through just straight up exposition. It's like, yeah, the original show also had its fair share of exposition, but like when it was giving its exposition, it was through like narration or something like that, so it fit the scene more. There's literally a part in the first episode where Gran is literally just saying the theme song from the original show for like no reason. I mean, obviously it's to like give the kids backstory or whatever, but still, it's just like she's just straight up spewing exposition to the audience, and it's like, this could have been handled a little better. Like the show was good at explaining stuff without having to just straight up take multiple minutes to explain it to the audience. So yeah, I thought that being said, I don't want to be too negative because there are aspects to this show that I did like. For instance, you guys have already mentioned it. The bending, the fight scenes, the special effects were all pretty great. The thing this show has going for it are the fighting and bending scenes. Like one of the things I was worried about the most for this show was the bending, because the bending could not look bad. If the bending looked bad, then this show was doomed. thankfully the bending doesn't look bad. The bending looks pretty good, and like the fight, like I think Miranda mentioned, the fight choreography, all that's great. That is the one thing I feel this show has going for it.
I actually don't think it's the best, like, the choreography and the bending, because it's all close-ups, like, I can't think of I think I could think of one scene where we just see someone like, Aang's putting out fires, and it's an overview shot, and you can actually see the movements he does. Whereas, like, with Zuko, all he does is, like, flips and stuff. Like, it's interesting. I wish that they focused more on, like, visually showing the choreography, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, I'm not gonna say that the bending was like mind blowing and the fight scenes were mind blowing, but they were. I personally felt like they were good though, and like those were some of the best parts of the show, in my opinion.
I was just gonna say for being like a show, like I think that like the fighting and the like especially the VFX for the bending specifically, like were pretty dang good. But like yeah, obviously I think it's fair to say like I feel like we're all feeling the same way. Like the fight sequences in general for just being like media, like not amazing, but not terrible. Like there's plenty of things that are worse. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, and I think that's the one thing that this show has going for it. I think they did a good job on that. Everything else, I'm not too keen on. Although there is, and we'll get into it later, but there is one part of the show that I actually did kind of like, and it actually helped like alleviate my view on the show just a tad bit. But other than that, you know how you guys only finished Monarch because you knew we were reviewing it for the podcast? I honestly feel like if I didn't have to review this for the podcast that I wouldn't have even bothered finishing the show at least.
I was just trying to comment that it was interesting. Like I feel like our I mean it makes sense. Like this is your favorite show of all time. And then like last time like you liked Monarch more than Miranda and I, but I feel like you're the one who likes this show less than either of us, seemingly at least. Not that you hate it, but just like it less.
I would agree with that. I think based off of your guys' short impressions, I think you guys liked this show better than I did. Which, yeah, this is the complete reversal of Monarch because I liked Monarch more than you two did, and it seems like you two liked this show more than I did. So that's
Which
funny.
like yeah, it is. I will say like cuz you commented on it, so just to give my 2 cents real quick, but yeah, I mean, I will say that like you brought up like the acting. Which again, interesting. So you said specifically that you thought Zuko's actor was like the worst of the kids, at least. I thought he was one of the better ones, honestly. Like Aang, I thought he was not great. Like he felt kind of like Miranda said, he was way too serious all the time, and like I don't know, like his voice sounded close to like the original Aang, but other than that, I mean, he just felt very flat the entire time. Like he had no range. I felt like.
That's how I felt about Zuko. I thought Zuko was like really wooden and flat in most of his scenes.
I wonder if that's because of, like, the writing. It's like they aren't getting as much direction as they need, or maybe they're just young actors, or, like, maybe, like, the writing and the dialogue they're giving to them, it just isn't fitting properly.
I feel like it was a case where they focused more on trying to find actors that looked more like the characters than for their acting abilities because I don't really feel like they weren't the worst actors ever by any means, but I feel like Aang fell very flat. I don't feel like Katara was very good either. Like I feel like her face stayed the same like all the time no matter what feeling she was feeling. But, like, inflection wise, like, line delivery wise, like, some of it was, like, not that bad. Like, Sokka, kind of a similar thing. Like, his face pretty much always looked the same. Like, he didn't really emote very well, but, like, voice delivery wise, like, he was okay most of the time.
Can
I don't
I
know.
ask you a question then? Could you go into detail then what you liked about Zuko's acting then? Because you kind of went into detail about like Katara's and Sokka's acting. So what was it about Zuko's acting that made you think, oh yeah, this is the best out of all of them? I'm just curious.
I don't know if I would necessarily say he was the best out of all of them, but like compared to the other kids, I feel like I liked him. Like I liked him more than Aang for sure, and then yeah, I don't know, like, but I guess like the thing that I liked, I mean, I guess again is just that he felt a bit more expressive, like his face, like in his facial expressions, he was a bit more expressive, and his voice wasn't like between his facial expressions and his voice delivery, like his line delivery, I felt like it was expressive more so than the other kids. Like he at least had more going on there, a wider range of feelings and whatnot. Especially, I guess it helps too that his character has a wide variety of like scenes where like you get the flashback scenes where he's still kind of happy, and then for most of the show he's just kind of uh not happy. He's just depressed and
Angry.
angry. Yeah. But yeah, then you get like quieter moments where he's more still, like the part where he's like with Aang after he busted him out, and like they're having a calm moment and he's kind of solemn, and then obviously then again he gets angry again. Then you get like the tender moments with him and Iroh, which I agree with you with Iroh. I think he's the best part of this show for sure. He might also be the best part of the original show as well, but that
This is
remains to be
true.
seen since I haven't finished watching that show. But
No, that's true.
Yeah,
okay,
like
Iroh,
Iroh's
good to
probably
hear.
the
I love
best. So.
Iroh, man. He's probably my favorite character from the original show. I don't want to go too off topic. Sorry, Udi, I'm kind of hijacking what you
No,
were
no, you're
saying.
good.
I don't want to go too off topic, but Iroh legit had an impact on me when I was a kid because now once again, Udi, you haven't gotten to this episode yet, but you kind of gave us permission to like
Yeah,
freely talk, so I'm gonna bring this up. There's an episode. There's a one of the most famous episodes from the original show, is the Tales of Ba Sing Se, and one of the most famous segments from that episode, because the Tales of Ba Sing Se is like a collection of like short
Yeah, like
stories,
vignettes.
yeah, short vignettes for each of the characters, and one of the more famous ones is the Tale of Iroh. And in the Tale of Iroh, like I said, like as a kid, like there's a scene in that episode where Iroh's getting robbed or mugged. He's getting mugged. And instead of like, freaking out, cowering in fear, or heck, even like firebending on him and fighting back, he sits the guy down, gives him a cup of tea, and just talks to him. And even the guy who mugged him was like, "This is so nice. Like nobody's ever done this for me." Iroh taught me to be good to people. Like as like, because you talk about like kid shows giving lessons to kids and whatnot. As a child, like I feel like now once again, my parents were great in raising me into who I am today. But I feel like just part of that episode, like Iroh taught me how to be good to people, and I feel like that's part of the reason why I am who I am today. So
yeah. And I will say that like even just from the bit that I've watched of Iroh in the show, like the original show so far, I feel like he's definitely like just his energy and is just like such good dad or cool uncle energy, but like he's wise, like genuinely the things that he's saying are useful and thoughtful and caring and empathetic, and like his character is so interesting because it really is like one of the most layered characters in the show. Like he is from the Fire Nation, he has done terrible things, but in his older age and like everything that's happened in his life, like losing his son and everything, like he's gained so much perspective, and he cares so much for Zuko, and he sees past like the the just blind anger and taste for domination of the Fire Nation, and just like completely disagrees with it. But I mean, he's kind of stuck because he's like the brother of, he's not like, he is the brother of uh the leader of the Fire Nation. So he's just like, he's just not in a good position to disagree. But I mean, he does what he can where he can, and he does try to use his position in a good way. But I mean, again, like he's definitely not like, he's flawed, but he's human, He's done bad things, but he's still a good person at heart, and he's trying to do his best to bring that good and bring it into the world and make the world a better place despite the terrible things that he did in his past.
Yeah. I think um that Zuko and Iroh's relationship in this version of the show is probably one of the best things. And like you guys have said, like Iroh is a very wise and prominent character throughout the cartoon, and I like the fact that they like keep him that way and like build up a relationship with Zuko in a slightly different way. Like one of the two scenes in this whole show that I like got a very strong emotional reaction from me was when Zuko talks to Iroh at uh Iroh's son's funeral, and like that moment, like it's just very touching, and like I think that helps establish their relationship.
Of the things that I did like from this show, that scene is one of them. I really liked that scene. Like you said, it was very touching. They had this beautiful piano rendition of Leaves from the Vine, and I love that song. And it, it kind of gets me emotional whenever I hear it because obviously in the original show, when that song plays, something very
Yeah.
emotional is happening. So like that was I had like a beautiful rendition of that song just playing in the background, and it just worked so well for that scene. That is by
Mhm.
far one of the best scenes in this live action remake for sure.
Yeah. And then the moment you brought up the Tales of Ba Sing Se, I'm like, I just watched that episode and like instant tears happened.
Yeah.
Like it's just it's especially because it's honoring I forget.
Mako.
Yeah, thank you. It's honoring Mako, so like it's like just like a little ball of emotion, and the fact that they can like try to translate that a bit into the show is like one of the positives of this show.
I wanted to jump into the first topic of our discussion points here, regarding the changes that this adaptation made. How do you guys feel about the changes that they made? Were there any that you liked, any that you disliked? Well, we'll start with you, Miranda.
Hey. Well, like I said, I liked the part where Zuko and Iroh are at the funeral. I don't really know when or if that's ever brought up in the cartoon. Um but like I like that part. Um I have some notes, so I'll just run off a few things. Um in general, I don't know if I like or dislike. It's probably kind of more on the neutral side on the adaptations they did do. They're just kind of confusing, I guess. Maybe not neutral, but confusing. Like the show is very much a different tone, whereas like the cartoon starts off really kind of like chill and like silly and a kid's cartoon, and it eventually evolves into a more serious story, and the action that's taking place is more serious by the time you get to the end. But they kind of just started off with it being more serious. Again, I think by doing a flashback in the first episode, it takes away some mystery of who Aang is and takes away the moment away from Katara and Sokka on finding Aang. And I think by changing that moment too, it kind of leaves out some of Katara's character, since she is frustrated with Sokka and the situation, and she's using her power, and she's so powerful with her bending, and eventually that's how they find the avatar, and instead they kind of just run into him with a canoe in the ocean, so a frozen ocean, but it's still a bit odd. um they like combine some episodes, like bossing, no, not bossing, say oh Mashu. um they like combine like 3 or 4 different episodes. um The one where they meet the inventor at the air temples, they put that one in there. They put the jet stuff in there too, and like, not that we really need to see Katara and Sokka turn into candy crystals, but like They changed Boomy up a bit too, although he doesn't really have much character in the original cartoon. Um, it's just like interesting things. The one that really kind of like bugs me is the Cave of Lovers. Like that is a key moment in Katara and Aang's relationship, and they kind of just didn't do it. And they're like, "Oh, it's a cave of lovers," and it's like, "Oh, you know, it's Katara and Sokka in the
Yeah, I
cave,"
was gonna say instead of
and it's like,
Katara and Aang, it's Katara and Sokka,
which
and
I felt kind of like,
yeah,
y'all are
me
missing the point of this
me
cave. That's
too.
weird.
Yeah, I was weirded out by that to be honest.
I don't know if they said anything about this before the show came out, but like, was there a reason they decided to not do like the Katara and Aang like liking each other and whatnot thing? Because they very much just like did not want to do that seemingly.
Yeah, I have no idea if they said anything about it.
That's something I didn't even really think about because yeah, one of the biggest points of the cartoon is Aang having a crush on Katara. Is that even
I don't
really
know if it's one of the biggest ones, but it's definitely in there.
I would say it's a big thing. It's throughout all 3 seasons and it's
Okay,
constantly brought up throughout the
I guess
entire
it's
show.
overarching.
Yeah. But like did they even explore that with this remake? I don't
No.
remember. Yeah,
I
no.
don't think they did.
Yeah.
In fact, Katara at one point is just like, "We're family, Aang," and I was like, "Oh, so they're really not doing the they like each other at all thing." Plus, like, yeah, the that tunnel sequence. I mean, like, I feel like if they were leaning into that, they would have probably kept it the same. But yeah, no.
Yeah. I mean, like, they are a family and, like, it's said in the cartoon, like, the little trio and then the eventually group with Toph and Zuko, like, they are a big family, just not, like it's kinda weird, um, that they, like, because that's, like Katara and Aang liking each other is something that, like, is there, but, like and there's episodes where they explore that, and they just, like, ignored it for this. But then they turn around and have Sokka kiss Suki, like, right away. I'm like, "Okay, his first kiss is supposed to be with the moon spirit with Yue, and you're just gonna change his story and, like, I don't understand why they change it, and not to get, like, too, like, weird or not weird, too invested in a love story about some cartoon characters, but, like, the way they set it up in the cartoon, again, is relevant to the character development, so I don't know. It's just strange.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they made very odd choices when it came to like romantic companions in the show, and that's just like from the bit of the show that I watched so far. Like again, Aang and Katara not really not liking each other as more than just like friends or whatever. Felt just like an odd change because I feel like I mean again I don't know how it plays out in the original show, so I mean I don't know, but to me it felt like if you made like Peter Parker and Mary Jane not like each other, like you just made them friends. Like that might be too strong of a comparison. I don't know, but like they seemed like from both sides, they seemed like they liked each other in the original show, and it was brought up semi frequently because it's like when it did come up, it's like, oh, Aang, Aang likes her, and then she'd see him like talking to other girls, and then she'd get jealous, and then blah blah blah, and it's just like a back and forth, because that that's just how like being a kid is or whatever. Like you have a crush on someone, and then like if you're friends with them, you don't want to ruin the friendship, and so you don't say it, but like you both have the understanding of like you like each other, and so I don't know, it just very weird change, and yeah, like with Sokka like immediately having like a thing with Suki and then yeah, I don't know, just weird.
Yeah. It is it's so strange. Like, the changes they make is so strange. Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't know if I think the original creators were supposed to be on this, and then I think they left because of creative differences or something, but, like, I don't know. And, like, the whole thing is just kind of odd. The whole time I was watching it, I was, like, comparing it to the cartoon and, like, I really, like, should have tried not to do that, but it's like I said earlier, it's hard to, like,
Yeah, you
take
you
it
really
from it.
can't, honestly. Like, you really can't help but compare it to the original show.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Udi, what did you think? Because you don't have, like, a strong childhood connection to this necessarily, so, like, did you also find it odd or, like, anything like that? Like, what do you like or dislike or anything?
In relation to what
Just in
exactly?
general.
Yeah, like, how do you feel about the changes
Yeah.
this adaptation made over the original show?
Because like, I
Ah,
clearly think it's odd, but, like, I wanna know, like, your opinion since you're less connected and then Dan obviously is way more connected, so, like
yeah. So yeah, I mean, from the changes that I picked up on, I would say I didn't like most of them, but so like a big one, and this was controversial even before the show came out, was like when they were at Kyoshi Island. Again, like Sokka not initially coming off as sexist and misogynist, and then learning, to change his ways and uh learning respect for other warriors and specifically for women warriors and like learning how like tough they can be. I feel like that took away a lot more. I saw the headlines and I saw the things online when like that came out and I was like that seems like a pretty dumb thing to cut because it did seem like an important character bit for him. But I was like, maybe they'll make it work in some way. But no, like he just immediately from the start was like super respectful and whatever. Like, okay, cool. Like obviously like that's how people should be. But the whole point was like that diminishes his character arc because he's not growing as much. Like in the show he grew a
Mhm.
lot. And so like that immediately, like after getting to that, I was like, I don't like this change. Like this didn't do anything except again, like we were saying, it seemed like they did that just so that and I mean like there was some sort of like romantic stuff there in the original show, but they didn't go as hard into it. Like, I think she kissed him on the cheek or something at one point, but that was basically it.
Yeah.
But it was more of just like him learning respect for like women warriors and giving them the respect that they deserve.
Mhm.
Um, but in this, it's just like they completely forego it, and it felt like such a stupid change, like something they could have done, but they decided not to because for some reason they wanted to make Sokka some like playboy bachelor who every town that they go in he has to try to find a new girlfriend. Like I didn't understand that change.
Yeah.
Um
I don't understand it either, like, it's a key part in his character development,
yeah.
and, like, characters are allowed to be flawed, and they're just taking all the
Yes.
flaws of all these characters and just getting rid of them.
Exactly. It's so annoying because like that just allows characters to grow because people, characters are based on people and people grow all the time because
Mhm.
we're dumb and we're flawed, but like we can learn and we can be better, we can choose to be better, we can learn to be better. But like if you just make your characters perfect from the start, then like it's just boring because you don't change enough. But that aside, so that like those changes were annoying. I didn't like that Aang just for seemingly no reason didn't try to learn any bending and the on the journey compared to the show. Like on the show it made
Mhm.
sense, like he was learning as they went. In this, he just like didn't try to learn anything, and then they're like at they're at the northern water tribe, and they're like, "Oh, what'd you learn?" He's like, "Oh, I haven't learned anything." It's like, "Oh, he won't be as much help." It's like, why did you not learn anything, Aang? Why didn't you put aside 5 minutes every time that you were in one of these places to try to learn bending? Like that's all you're supposed to do is learn the different forms of bending. So why are you not doing that?
I think that has a connection to Katara, because like, Katara is a self-taught waterbender at the start, like, she might not be the strongest or the most confident in her skills, but she knows, like, basic, like, movements and has the ability to do that, and in this version, she could barely make a bubble of water. So, like, she doesn't quite have the skills in order to, like, teach Aang, because she helps Aang with his very intro level waterbending.
Yeah. Which, like, on that note, like, I also me I don't know, like, personally, I wasn't a big fan of Katara just not really needing a teacher, like a master. Like, her just becoming a powerful waterbender just out like, I don't know. Like, I could understand people liking that change, but for me, it's like, well, then why would masters exist? Like, if everyone could just theoretically teach themselves, then why do you need masters? Why do you need to teach each other? Like, that felt kind of like a diminishing change where it's like, I kind of get it, but also it's like but also I feel like it kind of ruins that point a little bit. Plus, again, like with Katara, I didn't like that they didn't make her as much of a hothead. I liked that she got jealous in the
Mhm.
show and like the original show. I liked that like not even just like romantically, like when Aang would talk to other girls or whatever. I liked that she got jealous like in that one particular episode where he picked it up super quickly and she got
Mhm.
angry at him because he picked it up super quickly. But that's the point. Like he's supposed to be a prodigy and he like that was the whole thing. And so in this adaptation it's like, well, not only did he not pick up any other bending in the whole adventure that they went on, but like they didn't have that whole thing. So again, it's the whole thing of Katara just like they all had their own arcs, I guess, but like it just felt a lot more flat because he didn't
Mhm.
have all this dimensionality of like Katara, being kind of a bit of a hothead, and Aang being a kid, but having to be the savior of the world, and then Sokka, learning to improve as a person, and like all these different things, and you just got rid of like all of that, and then like yeah, sure they still have arcs, but they just felt way weaker in comparison to the original show.
Yeah, I agree. It's very flat.
Yeah, like they got rid of all the personality of the characters. They're like I don't, and this is probably going to be more harsh than I mean for it to be, because again, like I don't think this show is that bad, but like they feel like hollow impersonations of the original characters.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's. I feel like there's like another a thing or two that I also didn't like, but I'll pass it on to you guys because I feel like I was talking a lot.
Oh, just you wait, because now it's my
You're like, boy, you haven't heard nothing yet.
yeah. Well, I want to start off first by saying you guys share the exact same mentality that I share. Like, I already kind of said this in my brief thoughts, but yeah, the changes they make just don't make sense. And I personally feel like this comes from just the showrunners just fundamentally not understanding the original show. Like it was revealed the reason why like they took the sexism out of Sokka is because and this is and I'm quoting them right here, they felt like it was too edgy for today's environment to have like a sexist teenager. Yet in the final
Too
episode,
edgy.
yeah, they said
What
it
does
was
that
too
mean?
edgy. Beats me, Miranda. But yet they kept Master Paku's sexism in like the Northern Water Tribe. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so an old man can be sexist, but a teenage kid can't. Like, what sense does that make? And another thing, they actually show the genocide of the air nomads in this show. Like,
Yeah.
they show the Fire Nation's attack on the Southern Air Temple, which is where Aang is from. And it's like, okay, so you're telling me that a 16-year-old being sexist is too edgy for you, but the genocide of an entire culture? Yeah, that's okay. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. But once again, I just feel like the showrunners just didn't understand the concepts and themes from the original show because like you guys already stated, Sokka being sexist was part of his character arc. That was part of him learning that women can be just as good of fighters and just as powerful of warriors as men can. And what they did is they took that and they kind of put that in the final episode with Master Paku not wanting the women of the Northern Water Tribe to fight. So they kind of still had it, but they used Master Paku, I guess, instead of Sokka. And it's just like, well, that was part of Sokka's character arc. And Master Paku, like, that was just the culture of the Northern Water Tribe. Yeah, it's sexist. Yeah, it's still wrong. but that's what he grew up believing in because that's what his culture taught him. Sokka is just like any other, like, cuz come on, like we were all sexist when we were kids, like yeah, boys are better than girls. Like we were all sexist at one point and then we all learned, hey, you know, that's not the way you should think. And that was important for Sokka and they took it out because it was too edgy. And then like another thing, Miranda, you had mentioned that Aang is super serious, like
Mhm.
the whole show is just focused on being the Avatar. So the reason that is happening is because the showrunners are like, oh well, you see, the original show was like 24 episodes long. We're only 8 episodes long, so we don't have time to do that. So we want Aang to just focus on her task or on his task.
They're an hour long. There's 16 episodes if you were to compare it to the cartoon, like, that's majority of the season.
Exactly, and once
Like,
again,
let them go penguin sledding, like,
once
come
again,
on.
it just comes from the showrunners fundamentally not understanding the original show because there is a reason for why Aang goes on those side adventures. There's a reason he goes penguin sledding. There's a reason he wants to ride the elephant koi at Kyoshi Island. It's not because it's a kids show and they need to have like fun little lighthearted kids show moments. Yeah, that's part of the reason, but the entire point behind that is because Aang was given a responsibility, a huge, major responsibility at way too young of an age. It's said
Mhm,
multiple times in the original show by Monk Gyatso that Aang was told he was the Avatar at too young of an age. They
mhm.
should have waited until he was 16, but because of the Fire Nation and the war looming, they had to tell him while he was only 12. So Aang, like, there's a moment in season 1 of the original show where Aang finds out that they're going to take him away from Monk Gyatso so he can focus more on his Avatar training. Like, Aang's only a little kid. Well, he's not a little kid, he's 12 years old, but still, he's only a
A
kid.
little, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he is. Yeah, but still, he's only a kid, and you're telling him that okay, he has to stop having fun and he has to start just completely focusing on avatar training. No, he still wants to go out and have fun because he doesn't want to have to deal with this huge responsibility that he was given at way too young of an age. That's why he runs away. So like that's why that's the reasoning behind those side adventures. It's because he's still a kid and he wants to have fun and he doesn't want to think about this major responsibility, this very adult responsibility that he has to do at such a young age.
Mhm.
And the showrunner's like, "Oh, but you see, we don't have enough time, so we're just going to skip over that." It's like, but that's a fundamental part of Aang's character that
Yeah,
you're just not understanding.
yeah. Yeah, they just by taking that out, I think I probably mentioned this earlier, you lose a bit of that, like, time with the characters to see how they
Yeah.
are just as people, not as these great warriors or these heroes or these people with great responsibilities. They're just kids.
Exactly. And like I really don't know what it's like to like plan an entire TV show out, but like if you feel like having 8 episodes is too little, maybe don't have just 8 episodes then. But once again, I don't know what the behind the scenes was like for production. Maybe they could only have 8 episodes. Okay, that makes sense then. But still, like if that's going to be an issue, maybe just don't do that. But yeah, like those are the changes, like some of the big changes that I didn't like. There's other just little changes too that just once again just don't make sense. Like you guys mentioned the Cave of Two Lovers. Now that's a thing from season 2 that they put into season 1. And it's like cuz in the
Is it
origin
season?
yeah, it's season 2. It's like episode 1 or 2 of it's like very early season 2.
Okay.
So, but like once again, like that's like in that episode, like because that's the episode that's kind of based off like the Boomy part because like Aang gets captured and is with Boomy while Sokka
Mhm.
and Katara are exploring the caves. Because you see in the original episode, Sokka and Katara just get captured with Aang.
Yeah.
So it's like, why do the Cave of Two Lovers? Well, they're referencing season 2 because in season 2, and much like we find out at the end of season 1, Omashu gets captured by the Fire Nation. So they can't just directly go up to the city gates. So they have to go through the cave system in order to go through Omashu undetected. Like that was the point of the cave, but they put it in season one because it's like, oh, okay, Sokka and Katara didn't get captured by Boomy, so this is how they sneak their way back into Omashu so they can catch up with Aang and Boomy. It's like, okay, but then like, are you just gonna have them go through the caves again for season two? And then I just feel like they put stuff in there to be like, oh, hey, remember this? Like, do you remember the Cave
Yeah.
of Two Lovers? Do you remember the nomads from season two? Well, here they are. It's like they just put it in there to be like, oh, here it is. Are you happy? Do you like our Easter egg? It's like there's just no point.
Like, you know
Yeah,
that meme that was on TikTok?
it,
Secret tunnels?
it,
Yeah, here you
it,
go.
exactly. Yeah, I feel like they're doing it just to do it, not because it makes sense for the story, not because it's a little Easter egg that would make sense for the scene. They're doing it just to be like, oh, hey, remember this? So I didn't like that. And once again, Miranda, you mentioned that the Cave of Two Lovers was a very like important aspect of Katara's and Aang's relationship, and now like when that aspect's just gone because
Mhm.
they don't go into that. And then like another change that I just made no sense to me was the spirit world. Let's talk about the spirit world
Period.
episode. It's called the episode's called Spirited Away, which is a nice little reference to a very famous Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli movie.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, "Hey, you can't do
Yeah,
that."
exactly.
That's kind of
Yeah.
what I
So
thought too. I was like, "Hmm, that's the name of something."
yeah, so that episode's called Spirited Away. Now, one of the biggest issues with Avatar: The Last Airbender as a franchise as a whole is that the world does not have an established set of rules for its lore. So anybody can just go in and change things up. Like perfect example is the original show has a method for determining who the avatar is. Like whenever the next avatar is born into the cycle, each nation like has a method to determine how to figure out who the avatar is. Now there's two books that were released about Avatar Kyoshi called The Rise of Kyoshi and The Shadow of Kyoshi. I haven't read The Shadow of Kyoshi, but I have read a bit of The Rise of Kyoshi. And in The Rise of Kyoshi, the method is completely different than what is explained in the show. And I feel like that's one of the issues with not having an established set of rules for the lore is you come across contradictions like that. So in this episode,
Well, I think personally, I think that's fine for them to have like slight contradictions, only because like every avatar is it's minimum 70 years apart from each other. So like for Kyoshi, them figuring out Kyoshi was an avatar is probably gonna be different than how the no air nomads are figuring out how Aang is the avatar. Or like Korra literally could bend all of them as a 3-year-old child. Like,
yeah, I guess that's fair because you know times change through multiple years and whatnot. But I don't know. It just seemed like the method they used in the original show was the method that they always used.
mm,
So, but then again, that could be like the air nomad method. Like maybe each nation has
yeah,
their own different technique for determining who the avatar is. But anyway,
it's very possible.
so so in this episode, this is the episode that is based off of the Winter Solstice arc from the first season, which is of the original show, which is my favorite arc in the or one of my favorite arcs in the original show. I love the Winter Solstice episode. So that's when Aang goes into the spirit world for the first time, and it's with the angry spirit Haibot, the spirit of the forest. Now, um, it's explained in the original show that only the Avatar and people of very vast spirituality can enter the spirit realm. Regular people can't go into the spirit realm unless they're
Mhm.
captured by a spirit, which is what happens in the Winter Solstice arc. But in this show, Katara and Sokka are able to enter into the spirit realm with Aang.
Yeah,
And that just makes no sense to me because once again, Aang shouldn't be able to take them in there with him because they shouldn't be able to enter unless they were captured by his spirit. Aang's not a spirit. He's the bridge between the spirit world and the like regular like mortal. I'm just gonna call it the mortal realm because that's what it is. Like
yeah.
he's the bridge between the spirit realm and the mortal realm. But he shouldn't be able to bring others in there with him. Like once again, it's explained in the show. You have to be a very very spiritual person. There's only ever been one person that was ever able to enter the spirit realm without being the Avatar, and that was Iroh, because
Yeah.
that's just how spiritual he was. So it makes no sense to me personally how Sokka and Katara were able to go in there with Aang and experience the spirit realm. Like that kind of
Yeah.
takes the coolness factor out of it.
Again, combining episodes. I think they were like, "We wanna do, like, the swamp episode where they, like Sokka sees Yue and Katara sees her mother, and, like, they wanted to, like, kinda bring that in, and then so that's why they, like, combined it and then have them go into the spirit world, but, like, it doesn't make sense.
Exactly, it doesn't make sense, and that is what I was saying before. If you're gonna make changes, they need to make sense, and this change doesn't make sense. And another thing they do in the spirit world that really doesn't make sense, what is Wang Shi-tong doing there? Now, for those of you who know, Wang Shi-tong is the owl spirit that inhabits the library in season 2 of the show. And the library is probably my favorite episode of all time. I love that episode. What is Wang Shi-tong doing
Yeah,
here?
I was like, "Why is he here?"
He should be in the library. What is he doing here? Once again, I think it's just the showrunners going, "Oh, hey, remember this? Here it is. Isn't this cool? Isn't it cool that we're including this?" You could have
Like, not
literally had
really.
you could have literally had any other spirit. It didn't have to be Wang Shitong. Like in the original show, other spirits, like there's like a monkey spirit that Aang runs into when he first enters the spirit realm. There's like a giant wolf that's just like walking around. There are different spirits that you could have used for that. You didn't have to use Wang Shitong. And I once again, I feel like the and I'm just repeating myself, but I feel like the reason they used Wang Shitong is so they could have the recognition. Just be like, oh yeah, remember this? I feel like that's the only reason why they had him. And then like the whole thing with Ko as well just was odd to me because like
Yeah, it was kinda odd.
yeah, because like in the original show, like Ko is and like Aang needs to go find Ko in the original show because this is during the season finale to season 1 because they don't know where the earth or they don't know where the moon and ocean spirit are. So Aang enters the spirit realm because he talks with Avatar Roku, and Avatar Roku tells him that there's a spirit that knows what happened to them, and like you need to go to him to figure out how to find them. So that's the whole premise there. But here there's like no build up to Ko because like there's build up to him in the original because like Roku explains to Aang like Ko, you need to be careful around Ko. You can't show any emotion or else he will steal your face. They don't do that at all in the show. Like Aang just runs into Ko. He doesn't know that he's supposed to hide his emotions so Ko doesn't steal his face. And then like Ko captures Katara and Sokka because he wants to eat them?
Yeah,
Okay?
that was weird.
Like yeah, like I don't even know if Ko ate people in the original
I
show.
I mean, unless that's how he takes his face, but, like, I don't think so.
Yeah, and then it's like he's in the spirit realm. Regular people can't enter the spirit realm, as I've just explained. So how would Ko even find people to eat? Once again, it makes no sense. It just makes no sense. And like, how does how does Aang not get his face stolen? Like, how does he know that he's supposed to hide all emotion from Ko? Nobody ever explains it to him. Not even Monkeyatsu. Does Monkeyatsu? Because he runs into Monkeyatsu later. Does he
Yeah,
even tell him that Ko steals faces through people showing emotion?
I don't know. I know, Aang, like, goes and talks to Roku in the fire temple, which he can just walk into, you don't need to, like, have 6 firebenders to get in. That's a little detail that I was like, "Why did you change that?" But,
Yeah,
and, like,
exactly.
he needs this totem to give it to him,
Yeah, they bring in
but,
some
like,
like weird totem
I don't
stuff. It's like, what is
I don't think
this?
anyone ever mentioned, like, you need to be not, like, um, emotional.
Exactly. And that was part because that part in the original show is so cool because like Ko's design is just creepy. And I gotta say, they did a great job on his design in the live action show. He looks just as creepy as he does in
Yeah,
the
he does
original
look
show.
creepy.
So they did a great job there. But like Ko's really creepy and like there's a really cool moment with Aang where like he his voice is like I think echoing all the past avatars, and he's like, show no fear, show no emotion at all. Like, it's like stuff like that was cool, and it's all lost in this adaptation because they decided just not to do that for whatever reason, and it just makes no sense. And another change that I don't like is the whole aspect of how Aang interacts with past avatars. Now, part of being the avatar means like literally you have the spirit of all of the past avatars imbued inside of you. So Aang at any time can sit down, meditate, and speak to his past lives. Now, in the original show, he interacted with Roku the most, which made sense. Avatar Roku was the avatar before Aang, so it makes sense for Aang to talk with him and interact with him the most because he was the most recent avatar. But in this show, they
He's like
change it.
connected to the whole like plot.
Yeah, and he's connected to the 100-year war. Exactly. He's connected to what's going on right now. But in this show, they change it. First of all, Aang can no longer interact with his past lives on a whim anymore. Now he has to be at a temple in order to interact with him. And then they kind of change it up to where it's Kiyoshi that tells him, because in the original
Yeah.
show it's Roku that tells him about Sozin's comet and what he needs to do and how he has to master all four elements before summer's end, or else like Ozai is going to use the power of the comet to end the war. That's
Hmm.
all Roku that tells him about that. And once again, it makes sense that Roku is telling him this because Roku lived through all of that. Well, he didn't live through like Sozin using the comet to like start the war, but he lived through like the beginning of the war. So it makes sense for him to be telling this to Aang. Why is Kiyoshi telling him this? Kiyoshi is like a couple hundred years removed from that.
I think it's because they were on Kyoshi Island, so they're like, okay, well, we're here, so let's have him talk to Kyoshi. And then they're like, okay, he needs to talk to Roku, so they go to the Fire Nation temple. And then, like, when they're in the Northern Water Tribe, they talk to Kurek. Kurek?
Kurok, yeah,
Yeah.
and but once again, it's just a matter of they made this change for no reason. Why change it so Aang can only interact with avatars at their temples? Why? Why do that change?
Yeah, I think that change was odd, but I don't. It threw me off at first, the fact that he talks to all three of the past avatars before him. Well, there's a bunch of them, but the three most recent ones, it threw me off at first, but, like, thinking about it now, and it's like, "Okay, he was at this place to so that makes sense for them like, for him to talk about it." I also like the fact that they, like, kind of bring that in sooner than, like, in the cartoon because, like, in the cartoon, he just, like, talks to Roku. It's like, okay, there are other characters here, and they have other things to say, and they had different avatar experience, and, like, Aang in general is trying to figure out how to, you know, defeat the Fire Lord without, like, breaking his morals and doing something terrible, um, or hurting people, stuff like that. So, like, it's just an interesting way to get different perspectives into the story, but, like, for him to only be able to talk to them when they're at a temple is kind of odd.
Yeah, like once again, it's a change that I just don't understand. Like, what's the point of doing it other than to just be different? Like once again, the changes got to make sense, and these
Mhm.
changes just don't make sense. And like they also use like that moment. Now Kiyoshi's kind of like a fan favorite because everyone always talks about how Kiyoshi like wouldn't put up with like any bullshit. Like she would just go in and do what she needed to get done. So like they give because in the original show, when Aang goes to the Fire Sage Temple to speak with Roku, like they have a moment where like Roku kind of takes control of Aang's body and like fights off the Fire Sages who used to be loyal to the Avatar, but now they're loyal to Ozai. And they kind of replace that with Kyoshi. And I will say, like the scene with Kyoshi, like fighting off the Fire Nation on Kyoshi Island, that was cool. Like that was really cool.
Mhm.
I'll give them that. But yeah, just like yeah, once again, just most of these changes just don't make sense to me. And
Yeah.
I think that's all I'm gonna say on that part because I've already
Yeah.
been talking for a while, and like those, I feel like those are all the changes that I had issues with. So
just before we move on really quickly, how did you guys feel about Azula and Lord Ozai in this show?
Like, how did we feel about their portrayals?
Yeah, compared to like the original.
Um, I like Fire Lord Orzai. I think that Daniel Day Kim did a good job portraying him, portraying his ruthlessness and whatnot. Like, I thought Fire Lord Ozai was fine. Azula, I don't really have an opinion on Azula yet because she's gonna be a much bigger player in season two. Because she's like barely in season. I don't even think she's in
She's
season
not
one
in
at
season
all.
1.
Yeah, she's not in season one at all in the original show. So like, they kind of have her a bit in here, and like they do a little bit with her, but she's like not much in the show in season one. So like, I don't really have an opinion on her. I think there's potential for her. I think the actress that plays her does a fine job. I think there's potential for her to, become like a better portrayal with the second season, especially because Azula is a very important part of season 2. So, they're all right.
And in the original show, did she have like those two friends, or was that like an addition to this Netflix adaptation?
She does have those friends. They don't show up until season 2.
Ah,
Like,
okay.
um, Azula also doesn't show up till season 2. So, like, to answer your question, I thought, again, be like, why are they bringing Azula in so soon with her friends so soon? Especially because in the show, she gets a really cool, like, intro to her. But, like, I think it, like, looking at it now, it, like, kind of makes sense because, like, Zuko and her have a very complicated relationship, and she has a very complicated relationship with Fire Lord Ozai and her dad, and like it makes sense for this version of the show to bring her in sooner. Um, and then like Fire Lord Ozai, I feel like is it menacing enough? Like you, I don't even think you see his face until like halfway through season 2 in the cartoon. So like he's like hidden in the shadows and stuff like that, and like Um, here they're just like, "Here's this guy, he sucks." Like, I wish they would have built up, like, that menacing feeling a bit more, but in general, I think they were pretty, like, good adaptations of their characters.
So you wish they had done more of like a Wilson Fisk approach?
I guess so.
But okay. Well, I was just curious because, like, yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten a lot of Azula yet. Like, from the bit that I did get in the original show, I mean, she's definitely like evil, like way more sinister and evil than like Zuko. Zuko,
Mhm.
I wouldn't even say Zuko is evil. I think he's just misguided
Yeah.
and just like got too much of the wrong. He learned too many of the wrong lessons growing up, and then obviously like the show, I feel like is the process of him unlearning those things and becoming more of who he actually is.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like Azula, I thought it was interesting that she was in here so early on, and then I mean, yeah, like I don't know if I've even seen the original show's version of Lord Ozai, like his face yet. Like I've seen him, like the shadow outline, whatever, but
Mhm.
I don't think I've actually seen his face in the show yet. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Miranda, you had mentioned that you don't think they showed Ozai's face until like midway through season 2. It's actually not until season 3. You don't know what
Oh,
Ozai
wow.
looks like until season 3. So,
Yeah, so he's literally just lurking in the shadows, causing mayhem and destruction, and, like, like and that, like, builds up this character and, like, creates a mystery around him too. Where it's like, now it's just like, "Yeah, here's this guy. He's the bad guy."
I also wanted to comment earlier. Technically, Azula does show up in season 1,
Okay.
during the flashback sequence to where
In
we
a
find.
flashback.
Yeah, in a flashback. Yeah, I
But
was gonna say.
we don't know her name. If you
Speaking
don't
of.
know who she is, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, but she actually does show up at the very end of season 1. Like it's if
Okay.
like if season 1 were to have a post credits sequence, it would be this because like it's Fire Lord Ozai like talking to Azula, and then we
Okay.
see like Azula. But I just want to say another change that they made that once again I just felt kind of ruined the moment from the original was during because we see the backstory of how Zuko got his burn. Now,
Mhm.
it's pretty similar to the original show, but like the thing is, the thing the original show does is once Zuko finds out that he has to fight his own father, like he doesn't want to do it. Like he's
Yeah.
literally crying, like on his hands and knees being like, please father, I don't want to fight you, like please. But then his dad's like, I got to teach you some manners, and then he burns his face. But in the original he's like fighting back. It's like, what the heck?
In the
It was
remake, they're fighting
or
back.
yeah, in the remake, that's what I meant to say. In the remake, they're fighting back. He's fighting back. It's like, what the heck? That kind of ruins the moment of the
Yeah.
original sequence, if you ask me.
I agree with that. It's like in the original, just having Ozine, like, or having Zuko beg not to be in this Agni Kai to apologize, and then for Ozine just to shoot fire at him and burn his entire like side of his face and his ear just because he misspoke one time, like that's
I will say I did think that the way they showed Ozai burning Zuko was effective in this show. I
Mhm.
liked how they showed that, but I just wish that once again this scene would have just been way more effective had Zuko been like how he was in the original show where he just straight up did not want to fight his own father. Like that scene would have been way more effective, especially with Ozai just kneeling down and just burning his son's face without any remorse. Like would have been way more powerful.
Yeah. And speaking of the scar and the makeup for Zuko's scar, I wish it was more prominent. It's very light. Like it's kind of difficult to see sometimes. And again, this could totally be a TV issue, as we know I have them, have TV issues, but like I wish it was like more prominent because it is such a terrible scar and like that's got to be at least like a third degree burn or something and in this version it's just kind of some paint on his face, I guess.
Me personally, I felt like it looked fine. Like it looked a lot better than the 2010 non-existent movie version. Like that in that one you could barely tell. Like the skin was burned, but like he didn't have like a mark as far as I
Mhm.
remember. But like in this one, I could always clearly tell that he had a mark. I could understand like maybe wanting it like a bit darker, I guess, but I felt like it looked dark enough, me personally. But
Yeah, like it doesn't look bad at all. Like it looks appropriate. It's just like I don't know. It's one of those little tiny nitpicky things that my brain was like, I don't know about that one. But
yeah, that's
I
fair.
mean, my brain did that with the wigs throughout this series
Oh
too. I'm like,
God,
I don't know.
Oh my god,
Yue's wig
Princess
was so
Yue's wig
bad.
is so bad. Oh.
Fun fact though, just like a random aside, did you know that the actress that played Princess Yue was actually she was the lead in the movie Prey from 2022?
Oh, that's really cool. I still need to
That
watch that movie.
Yeah, would recommend. But anyway, yeah, her wig was terrible.
like I spent time and looked up cosplays of Avatar characters and I'm like these cosplayers have better wigs and costumes and they're probably working on like a budget of a bag of chips, like not that much money compared to like this well-funded television show. And maybe they were just trying to get the silhouettes correct, but like you also have to like these are real people. This is not a cartoon. If they would have leaned more into like the anime style, like Netflix's One Piece live action adaptation, where that's heavily like that's a live action anime. If they would have done that with this adaptation of Avatar, I think the hair and wigs and costumes and everything would have fit better. But since they're trying to be realistic, it's like it's creating a juxtaposition that is jarring. But like not too jarring, but like a little jarring.
Yeah. I will just say that it is just sort of like a weird quality drop because I feel like everyone else looked pretty good, like all their hair and stuff
Mhm.
looked pretty good, and then Yue's hair just looked so bad. And then she had lines, she's like, yeah, and then, that's how my hair turned white. I'm like, no, it didn't. That's not real.
I mean, I don't expect them to have actors to bleach
No. Yeah,
their
no.
hair, but like,
Yeah, no. Like, I don't expect anyone to do that, but like, I feel like you could have gotten a much better wig than that. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe all because of the color it just will never look right. I don't know. But I
yeah,
feel like they probably could have gotten a better quality wig. Who's to
yeah.
say?
Like, okay, I don't think the quality of the wig is weird. I just think the way they made it is weird. Like,
Like
it's
too
not like,
complicated?
huh?
Like too complicated?
Maybe like in Twilight, like I think Breaking Dawn or no, maybe it's Eclipse. Like their wigs are bad in that, and you can tell.
Oh yeah,
But
those are
like,
really bad.
yeah, but like here is like obviously I know it's a wig, and it looks odd. Okay, looks cartoony, which is a weird complaint because like this is originally a cartoon. Is like it has that cartoon feel, and that creates that like contrast of like this is real people compared to like I don't know. I feel like basically so far we've just kind of like nitpicked this entire show, but
Yeah, I was gonna say we've spent like the last couple of minutes just talking about a wig.
It's so distracting though.
I mean, yeah.
Like I'd be watching because I thought she did a pretty good job. I like Amber Mid Thunder.
Hmm.
That's the actress that plays Princess Yue, and I thought she did a great job. But as I'm like watching her performance, I just kept looking up at her hair, like God, that's so distracting. Why? Like it's floating on your like it's floating on you basically. Like I can tell it's not your real hair, and it's so distracting. And then I'll keep looking at her face, and you're like, oh yes, yes, great performance, great performance. Look up at her. That wig. But it is what it is. It's not like I'm not gonna dock the show like, oh well, would be a 6 out of 10, but it's actually gonna be a 2 out of 10 just because of that one wig. Like, no, that's not. It's not that big of a deal, but it is pretty noticeable.
So to shift topics, how did you guys feel about the special effects? I feel like Netflix can be kind of hit or miss when it comes to special effects because, like, look at Stranger Things for example. The effects in Stranger Things look phenomenal, but Stranger Things is also like Netflix's baby, so like they're gonna put all the time and effort they can into making sure that show looks as good as it can be. But then look at The Witcher, for example. I personally think the special effects in the Netflix Witcher show look kind of bad at times to the point where it looks fake. So like Netflix, very hit or miss. I feel for this show, the special effects look fine. The animals looked good. The bending looked good. I was really afraid about how the CGI was gonna look because to adapt something like Avatar into live action, you're gonna need to use a lot of CGI, and I was kind of worried as to how that was gonna turn out, but it all looked all right. It didn't look half bad. What about you guys?
Me personally, I feel like it started out more rough than I feel like it ended up being. Like I feel like again within the first 3 episodes, I was like, "Yeesh!" Like I feel like in episode one, like one scene in particular that looked really rough to me was the scene where Katara and Sokka are like they're in their canoe and they're kind of in like the little um current that picks up where they get like sucked into like the spot where Aang is. I feel like that scene looked pretty bad. Like it was very obvious that like that was just all visual effects around them, and that it was just like them comped into the scene. But outside of that, and especially again, like in regards to the bending, I think the bending looked very good throughout, like across the board. Like every single scene that they were bending, and I think it all looked really good. And even the scene with like Boomy where he does like the sugar crystal candy or whatever, like I thought that looked pretty great too, and that's like a lot of complex geometry just like spawning out of nowhere. Um like there were scenes I feel like particularly with the earthbenders that looked a little like you could tell it was just like VFX. I mean obviously we all know it's all VFX, but
Like no,
like
they're actually bending real rocks.
no way. But yeah.
Oh my god, that lemur, he's earthbending.
But yeah, I feel like outside of that though, it was all pretty good. Like I think especially the water and the fire looked really really good, and I mean the wind. Like I guess it could have looked really bad, but I think they did a good job with the wind and stuff. But yeah, also like the creature design, like I thought he looked really good. As you know, you guys also said he looked really good. Um, and then we haven't talked about it yet, but even the water kaiju at the end looked pretty cool. Like I don't know, like
Yeah, I agree.
I wrote
yeah.
down water Godzilla question mark, even
Yeah,
though I
water gun.
know it's
Well, it
like
was
the moon
funny.
spirit.
It was funny because I was watching this with friends, and like we knew that the water kaiju scene was coming up, and I was like, "What if it's just Godzilla?" Like, so-
That'd been kind of funny. But yeah, I thought that that could have especially been really bad, especially because again, this is basically this is a TV show, so basically it could have just been like TV show quality kaiju, and that would have been terrible. But no, even like the water kaiju looked really really good. So yeah, I guess like as Dan was kind of putting it, like Stranger Things 4 was like shockingly good in the VFX department, I think. Like obviously like as he said that's Netflix's bread and butter, so of course. Like I think they literally opened their own VFX studio just for Stranger Things. Like that's how important it is for them and like important that it looks good and that's cool. Um, but I was like, I don't expect that this show is going to get that same level of quality, and I don't think it did. But I would say that it's definitely some of the best VFX they've probably ever done. So kudos to them.
I I don't I don't know cuz like the CGI on the fire looks good. It looks, realistic as CGI fire can get, 'cause, they can't do diagonals very well for their polygons or whatever. But like I think the CGI fire looked good, the rocks looked good. The water like threw me off though. Like I don't know, it's just something odd about it. Um like I don't know. Are you guys aware of the movie called The Abyss?
yes,
I'm aware of it, but I have not watched it yet.
Well, I think in that movie there's this like water creature that like mimics someone's face or something. And like the water is like rushing like and forming and like whatnot, and like I feel like that's from a while ago. I think the 90s maybe. Um to see water from the past to the present, like the water sims are getting better and better, and that with that being said, I feel like this water was like too calm. I don't know. Like is too smooth or something, but like I guess if you have a floating ball of water or like it's gonna be like smooth and not like a hose or like a running tap. So like I don't know, maybe to me I feel like it needed a bit more of like that white foam in it. But like it still looks like water and is believable as water. And then like the airbending was decent too. Um though I feel like the CGI covers what the bending is doing. Like I mentioned earlier, their forms, you can't really see the forms, you can't really see the actual like martial arts cuz I believe all of the bending is based off of several different martial arts. Um you can't really see that cuz it's like kind of all blocking that. And that's like my issue with it. It's not that like the CGI or the effects are bad or anything. They all stand up. They're all passable. They're like higher quality than most TV shows, I feel like. But like as like bending is a majority of the fighting and the action of the show, it would have just been nice to actually see what they were doing in the fight choreography. And Appa look kind of odd, but like obviously like they're translating a cartoon to live action, so they're gonna like look weird.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Momo for the most part looked really good, personally. Like, I felt like that was
Yeah.
the best they could have done for like doing a live action version of Momo. Appa looked fine. I mean, he looked a little like where the wild things are a bit, but other than that, like he looked fine.
I liked his chubby cheeks. I was like, I just want to squish. I want to put both my palms on his cheeks and just squish him. But yeah, Momo looked cute. I like him too. I was so scared that he was gonna die.
Yeah,
Sorry.
dude, like
Oh, yeah.
seriously, I was like, what the you can't kill Momo?
he was like
Seriously, that's like you can't do that.
he was like barely in the show, and then I thought they killed him. I was like, no, are you kidding me? But thankfully he's alive.
Yeah, I think earlier I mentioned the 2 scenes, that got an emotional reaction out of me was the Zuko Iroh funeral scene, and then when they almost murder Momo. I was like, "What are you doing? You cannot do that."
Thankfully they did not. But what were you gonna move to,
Yeah.
Dan?
Well, I was gonna move on to our next topics of discussion. I'm gonna just combine these two because we're running short on time here. Were there any favorite episodes or sequences that you guys had? And was there anything that you felt the remake did better than the original, at least for season or book one?
I think the scene that Zuko breaks Aang out of the prison, um, is my favorite sequence. Mainly because it's very pretty much accurate to the episode, minus the frozen frogs, because Katara and Sokka don't get sick. They're stuck in the spirit world for that time. But like, and then the moment where Zuko and Aang are like talking after Aang learns that he's the blue spirit or the has the blue mask, and is the one that saved him. I think that like little part is probably my favorite. What about you guys?
All right. So, despite my overwhelming negativity on this show, as I've stated earlier, there were some things that I did like. One of those being the final episode. I actually really did like the last episode to this show because one of the things that the final episode did that I thought was interesting, and this is an example of like a good change because this is a change, this is something that wasn't in the original show, and they added it to this show, and it's interesting. And I liked it. And that was when General Zhao or Admiral Zhao, that's when Admiral Zhao kills the moon spirit and then Aang becomes the ocean spirit kaiju. Now, in the original show, it's never really explained. Aang just kind of becomes the kaiju, and it's like a cool, really action. It's like a cool sequence and whatnot. But they actually kind of explain it here in the show, and you know what? I kind of like it. What happens is that pretty much after the moon spirit is killed, the ocean spirit merges with Aang and is pretty much channeling all of its rage through Aang. And they explain that the Avatar is pretty much gone now because he's merged with the ocean spirit. So now the ocean spirit is just going to endlessly wander looking for its lost mate. Like, I thought that was cool because that's something that's interesting. That's something that the original show didn't really explore, and the explanation for it is cool. I liked that. That was a cool change. That's an example of a good change. That's something that didn't feel like they changed it just for the sake of changing it, or they added it in to be like, oh hey guys, like remember this? No, this was something that they thought about, and it adds on to the concepts of the original show. Like if you're gonna make changes, do something like that. Do something that kind of like maybe the original show didn't really explain and like add on to it. Like that was cool. I also liked the backstory. Now this might have been episode 7, not episode 8, but I also kind of like the backstory that we get with Avatar Kurok. Now, we don't learn a lot about Avatar Kurok in the original show. Like he shows up for like a grand total of like 30 seconds in the original show, like during the season 3 finale. And we learn more about him actually in the Rise of Kyoshi book because he was the Avatar before Kyoshi. And it's see, you can get away with doing more drastic changes to somebody like Avatar Kurok because there's not a lot known about Kurok. So you can get away with like changing certain aspects about him. And what they did with Kurok I thought was cool as well. Like he pretty much like was attacked by malevolent spirits because the spirit world was like threatening to like cross over into the physical realm. So he was tasked with like fighting off these spirits, and it took a toll on his body to the point where like his entire body was scarred. That's cool. That's also really cool. Like I really liked both of those aspects to like the show's ending. And yeah, I call me a fan of the final episode. I liked the final episode. I also kind of like the final episode had a pretty good line too. Like I think it came from Aang. Like he said something. I don't exactly remember the full quote, but he said something along the lines of, "Yes, this isn't my time. I wasn't here when you needed me. My time was 100 years ago, but I'm here now, and I'm gonna do what I can to save the time that I'm in now." Like I think that was the line somewhere along those lines. I liked that. That was a good line, and I also kind of liked how even though it was me and my friends kind of poked fun at it afterwards, but I liked how the reasoning for why the ocean and moon spirit were the two fish circling the sea is because they wanted to know what it was like to be mortal. Like that's cool. I like that, but like me and my friends made a funny joke where it's like, well, they found out they die. So, but those were some changes that the show made that I actually really liked. And I do think like the whole like explanation for Aang merging with the water, the ocean spirit kaiju, I do feel like that was done better in in the remake than it was in the original show.
I do have to agree. I do like that part. Like like you said, it's not really explained beforehand in the original, but it was a good change.
I feel like favorite sequences, probably favorite episode would probably be the final episode as well. Like you said, for me as well. But for favorite sequences though, I'd probably do two very different ones. I would do the one that we talked about earlier with Uncle Iroh and Zuko when it's the funeral for Iroh's son, and then like he gives him the like was it like a medal that his son gave Zuko? I guess his cousin gave Zuko, right?
I don't remember
Like a
exactly what it
coin.
was.
Yeah, it was like um some kind of like school award or something.
Yeah,
Maybe. I don't know.
like to make him feel brave or whatnot, and then he like gave it to Uncle Iroh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that scene. I felt like it was definitely one of the most powerful and prominent scenes of Iroh and Zuko together. And
I
then
agree
the
with that.
yeah, very well done. And then the other sequence that I feel like I really liked is probably the Aang Kaiju sequence. I just thought it was well, like aside from being like visually cool, like I did like the sort of like him sacrificing himself to replace the moon spirit and like to avenge her really and to try to protect the North tribe. And then obviously we know how that worked out, but like I thought it was cool in the moment. And I for a moment there, I was like, are they really gonna kill off Aang in the first episode? Because I mean I think you alluded to this. I don't remember that happening at all, honestly, in the original show. So when that happened, I was like, what? But I was, oh, okay. As soon as they pivoted to Princess Yue, I was like, oh, okay, no, okay. It's like gonna be like the original show. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I think Aang just like channels the avatar state or something. Or like he is like in the Avatar state with the spirit, and he like still turns into the giant kaiju.
Well, yeah, because they
I just
explain
think
in
it's different, right?
yeah, like I said, they don't explain it at all in the original show, so it's kind of just left up to Aang doing like cool Avatar state stuff.
That makes sense. But yeah, so I would say those are probably my favorites, and then favorite episode probably, like I said, the final episode. And then as far as like anything that I think the remake did better than the original, um, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like anything really sticks out to me. Like I feel like something maybe. No, yeah, I don't know, because I was gonna say maybe something with General Zhao, but no, I still feel like I like General Zhao more in the original than in this. Like I thought he was pretty good in this too, but I still feel like I liked him more in the original show. And then like Azula, I mean, I think it was interesting, like an interesting change to have Azula appear from the beginning, but I don't know if it was necessarily like a better change. I don't know that it really did anything. I will say though, now thinking of that, maybe had they not had her in the show, they would have had more time to like have more like side adventures with Aang, and that would have been a better trade off than just randomly putting her in season one. But yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, I can't really think of anything in particular that I preferred more in the remake than the original.
So it's been confirmed that Netflix has already confirmed that they will be adapting books 2 and 3 of the original show. So they're committed to finishing this show right up to the end. Are you guys looking forward to seeing seasons 2 and 3?
I'm just glad it's getting finished. Because in the age of cancellations, like shows just get canceled for whatever reason, silly reasons. They get thrown in the trash for
Especially
tax
Netflix
reasons.
shows.
Yeah,
Like,
especially Netflix.
yeah, the fact that they're committed to actually finishing out the show is a good thing, I feel like. Am I maybe the most thrilled about it? No, but I'm sure I can still watch it and enjoy aspects of it. Um, I am kind of worried about how they're gonna handle Toph. Um, but I guess we'll just have to see how that plays out. But in general, yeah, I guess I'm kind of looking forward to them. It's just I'm sure when they roll around, I'll just rewatch the entire series of the cartoon yet again. But
Yeah, I'd say I'm probably like in a similar boat. I'm not gonna be like, woo, can't wait for season two, but I'm not gonna, like when it comes out, I'll be like, yeah, I'm ready to watch, and then we'll watch it with a podcast, and hopefully by then I'll have watched more of the original show. But that being said, I'm not against. I mean, if I wasn't against watching season two of Monarch, I'm definitely not going to be against watching season two or three of this. If it doesn't make any egregious changes, then I think the show will be fine. Like if it maintains like a similar course, it'll be one of those shows like it's a totally fine show and I won't mind watching it. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Like if they make any sort of really bad big change, that could really tank how the show is perceived going forward. But if they only make changes, which I mean some of the changes were not the best in this season, but yeah, I would say I'm definitely down to watch seasons two and three, and then I guess we'll see how we feel about them once they air. What about you, Dan?
So, I mean, I'm, I'm kind of with you guys. Like, before I ended up finishing season one, when I heard that they were adapting seasons 2 and 3, I was like, God dang it! Like, great, we're gonna get more of this. I really was not excited about that, but then once I saw what they did with the last episode, I was like, okay. I'm gonna be willing to give them the benefit of the slightest bit of the benefit of the doubt, because like my friend was saying, like she's hoping that for season two, like maybe it'll give them a chance to course correct and actually produce a better product, and I'm hoping that's what happens with these other two seasons, because like season 1 didn't instill me with much faith, but, like, if they can at least still try to find a way to stay true to the original story as told in season 2, but also, like, make changes that are neat and interesting and not making changes just for the sake of making changes and for Easter eggs and whatnot. Like, maybe it can be cool, but once again, just I don't know. Like Miranda said, I don't know how they're gonna handle Toph. I don't know how they're gonna even do the library. How are they gonna explain Wang Shitong being there and then also being in the spirit world? I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. But yeah, I can't say that I'm excited or even looking forward to seasons 2 and 3, but I will say that I'm hoping for the best. I am gonna hope for the best with that. And on a related note, would you guys like to see more live action Avatar projects? Like, what if they were to do a live action adaptation of The Legend of Korra? Would you guys like to see that? I mean, mainly this is a question for Miranda because I don't think you've even seen Legend of Korra, Udi, but you could still give your thoughts if you have thoughts.
Ah, yes, my favorite show, The Legend of Korra. Um, I mean, yeah, I'd probably watch it. That's all I have to say.
Well, what about you, Miranda? Would you like to see a live action adaptation of The Legend of Korra?
Um, Possibly. I think Legend of Korra has some storylines that definitely could be expanded on. Especially her relationship with Asami, I believe is
Yeah,
her
that's her
name.
name. Yeah.
So that could be really interesting to see in a more in-depth form. Um, but in general, like I don't really know if Korra needs to be adapted to live action. I don't even know if Avatar needs to be adapted to live action necessarily. But if they wanted to try to make like an original content story, maybe about the Earthbender as live action, or the new Avatar as an Earthbender in a live action form, I mean, I think that could be interesting. I think it might cause contrast issues and with the cartoons, but I mean, if they wanna try it, I mean, I'll try and I'll watch it and we'll see, but, like, there's only so many times you can try a thing before it gets old, so I guess that's my stance.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I would be open to a live action Legend of Korra adaptation. Now, I'm not gonna call Korra a bad show because it's not. The Legend of Korra is not a bad show. Is it better than Avatar: The Last Airbender? No. No, it's not. But it has some really good aspects to it. Like, I've said this before, like, well, I've said this before to Udis. He's heard this before, but I'll say it here. Here's my thoughts on Legend of Korra. Season 1 starts off great, or no, season 1 starts off bad but ends great. Season 2 starts great but ends bad. Season 3 is perfect, wouldn't change a thing. And then season 4 is what the hell. So, like, I have a lot of issues with Legend of Korra. So I would be open to Legend of Korra getting a remake because then they would have the chance to kind of fix the issues that I have with the original show. I would be open for that. Now, granted, if it was these showrunners working on the live action Legend of Korra adaptation, I don't really know if I have faith in them to make a better version of the original show. But I guess we'll have to wait to see how they do with seasons 2 and 3. But I'm open to a live action remake of The Legend of Korra because I think that show has a lot of issues that they could definitely fix with a remake. Except for season 3. Don't change a thing about season 3. Season 3 is perfect. But
I
like you also Oh, go ahead, Miranda.
I do have to say, I've only seen Korra, like, 1 time, maybe 1.5, so, like, I don't really remember much of it. So, like,
Gotcha. Okay.
what you're saying I'm like, "Okay, then maybe trying a new take on it would be beneficial," but like I said, I don't
Yeah.
remember it.
Yeah, and that's just my opinion. There's people out there that love The Legend of Korra. Like they'll even go as far to say no, Legend of Korra is a better show than Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think you're I'd like to have what you're smoking if you truly think that, but that's your opinion. If that's your opinion, more power to you. But yeah, so like maybe my word isn't the best, but then again, I don't know. I mean, it seems to be across the fandom that a lot of people don't prefer Korra over The Last Airbender, but there are some that do. So, yeah, who knows. But anyway, Miranda, you had mentioned like you'd be open to like seeing other projects be done in live action, like maybe the Earthbender Avatar that comes after Korra, like maybe do that in live action. I as well would like to see other live action projects for the Avatar franchise because I think the Last Airbender franchise there's potential for it in live action. Like I think the idea of doing a live action Avatar show or movie is a good idea. The only problem is that every time we get, both times that we've gotten it, they've tried to redo the original 3 seasons from the show. And like you were saying, Miranda, the original Avatar didn't need a remake. It didn't need a live action show. So that's the problem that I have with this is they're just trying to redo the original show when they could do something else. Like I think that the Avatar franchise is set up perfectly for an anthology show like True Detective or I think American Horror Story. I think that's also an anthology show. Like have each season follow a different avatar. Like maybe season 1 is Avatar Kyoshi, season 2 is Avatar Yen Cheng, season 3 is Avatar Korok, season 4 is Avatar Roku, have like that's this universe is set up perfectly for something like that and I would love to see that whether it be in animated or in live action form. So I think that doing other live action projects in the Avatar universe, I'd be open to them, but I'd want it to be something different. I don't want them to keep redoing the old shows. But once again, if they want to do a live action adaptation of The Legend of Korra, I'm down for that.
I think going into the past would be a great way for them to do it because there's like hundreds of avatars before Aang, right? And so many
Yeah.
stories in different time periods. Like, I think that would be really cool because I think in Korra we do get a bit of the backstory of the original Avatar and the lion turtle and all that jazz. So to like maybe pick somewhere in the middle, or you could go really far into the future. Be like, okay, do they ever make it to space? What is bending like in space? Is it even possible to bend in space? Like
You know
if
what?
you
Sorry, I just want to say you bring up a good point, but finish your thoughts. But I do have something I want to say real quick.
okay, like at what point did they stop being uh obviously they're going to incorporate their bending into space, but like maybe they incorporate it into space travel like in Korra. It's very steampunky, very like early 1900s. Like what would it look like in the year 5000 or something? Like
You bring up a really good point. I, for one, would actually like to see an Avatar story take place in modern day. Like what would that culture be like in modern day? What would like modern like like the year our present day now? Like what would it be like to for people to have these abilities? Like I guarantee you the Avatar would just be a huge celebrity. Like if these stories took place during our time period, so like what would that be like?
be like it's the Avatar on TikTok.
Exactly, yeah, they'd be like an online influencer or something or like
That'd
a
be so
streamer.
strange.
Yeah.
Truthfully, although the funny concept, I don't want them to do that.
No, yeah, I don't want them to make like the avatar like a streamer or whatever. That'd be really cringy
That would
and
be
would
really cringy,
fail.
yeah.
That would fail immediately. But I still would like to see an avatar story take place in modern day because that's interesting to me. I think that could be interesting and it could just be its one-off short little project that doesn't need to tie into anything and it's no harm done. So I would like to see that. All right, let's go into our ratings. We'll start with you, Udi. How would you rate this show out of 5 stars?
This is kind of a rough one because like I've said many times before in this episode, I really truly, especially taking it just for what it is and as a standalone thing, I really don't think it's terrible. Like it's a totally watchable show. Obviously compared to the original, I mean it's not as good, but like just taking it for what it is and trying to take it as a standalone thing, it's not bad. I didn't mind watching it. But I'm also it's not like a show like I'm gonna be like, "Oh, I can't wait to rewatch it," either. Like, I probably won't rewatch it until maybe we do season 2 or whatever, but, um, I'm gonna go with a solid 3. Yeah, I'll do a solid 3. It's leaning more positive than negative, but, like, again, it's just, like, it's a totally fine show. It's not great in any way, I would say. I mean, the best parts, again, we've said this before, Uncle Iroh and Zuko. I think like they're the best dynamic. They're the best part of the show for me at least. And then obviously like Uncle Iroh is just the best. But yeah, I'm gonna go with a solid 3. What about you guys?
Fair enough. What about you, Miranda? How would you rate this show out of 5 stars?
I'm also going to give it a 3, as it is like in the middle of the scale. Um, it's not terrible, it's not the greatest thing, but it's definitely an interesting watch. And at least they're giving it another shot at live action and seeing if they can do something slightly better, but we'll see with the next 2 seasons. And I mean, we won't really know how we feel about this until it's the well, for me at least, I won't really have a true form opinion of it until the entire show is finished. So, at this moment, a 3.
Yeah, I guess the better question would have been how would you guys rate season one? Not necessarily the show, but how would you like rate season one? So yeah, this is how we're rating season one because obviously we can't rate the entire show because seasons two and three aren't out yet. And once season three comes out, like that will be something fun that we could do is we could rate the entire show as a whole. But yeah, we're just talking strictly about season one. And yeah, so for me, how would I rate this? So as a fan of the original show, once again, I didn't like it. I felt the changes they made didn't make sense. I didn't really like the acting too much. The characters, like I guess I didn't really comment too much on the characters, but I really wasn't that big of a fan of most of the characters outside of Iroh, because like you guys had already mentioned, like Katara was missing the like kind of hot-headedness to her character. Like Sokka, well, I mean, he was still jokey and whatnot, but he didn't really feel like the same character from the original show. And then Aang, like the Aang's acting wasn't that great at times either, and it just felt odd like at times. So yeah, I just was not the biggest fan of the show. Now I will say that I would probably give this show a 2, but because I enjoyed the last episode, I'm going to raise my rating to a 2.5. So that is what I'm giving season 1, a 2.5. So the average comes out to a 3. You guys disappoint me
Hi.
because this show just isn't as good as the original, and I just don't think it's I just don't think it's a good show, me personally. But and a three is like above average, if you ask me, or not above average. I guess it's not above average, but a 3 is like average, and I feel like this show is below average to me. But I can understand why you guys would, like it more than I did.
Thank you so much for joining us and listening to our conversation about Avatar The Last Airbender, the Netflix series. If you're interested in hearing more, check us out on our previous episodes, and as always, you can find us on Instagram at Atomic Lizards Pod and on a letterbox at atomic_lizards. Play me-o.